Hey everybody, how's it going? It's me, Logan here, and right now I'm with John Sweeney Sr., who died April 19th, 1826. He was born around 1750, and he served in the American Revolution. Now, the title of this video is going to be "The Colonists Were Traitors to the British Crown," which they were. A spade is a spade. But what the point of this video is going to compare the Revolutionary War veterans. I'm going to compare them to the Confederates, to their descendants. Both were rebels. Both betrayed their mother countries. But in the modern perspective, in 2025, both are not compared fairly. Now, I am a descendant of both wars, the American Revolution from Pennsylvania and Virginia, and the Civil War from Pennsylvania and Virginia. I have both Southern and Northern bloodlines and ancestors. Now, what I don't think is fair is that in our society, that these guys are given so much accommodation, they're given so much praise, so much applause, and it is a good thing that they were rebels. But they committed treason against the British Crown. I'm also British, okay? And I also have a lot of perspective when it comes to my Revolutionary War ancestors, like John Sweeney here, like him. Many of my ancestors fought in the cause that he did in the 1770s and 80s. But what I think is so ridiculous nowadays is that the Confederates are thrown under the bus and called traitors and rebels and completely ignored and demonized for their, let's just say, betrayal to the Union. But these guys are applauded. Well, where do you think the Confederacy and the Confederates got their ideas from? Where do you think secession and independence came from? Because, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, these guys were the godfathers. They were the founding fathers of the principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, not to burst any of your bubbles, not to be a ingrateful descendant. I'm not trying to say that I'm not trying to say that I don't applaud what they did, because I think it was courageous. I think it was noble. I think it was great. But what I'm trying to say is that you can't blindly ignore one side, but then put this side on a pedestal. You can't ignore and demonize the Confederacy when they're only reenacting and only commemorating the service and the principles and the rights of these men. Because if it wasn't for these men and what they did, if it wasn't for them, the Confederates would have never have had the blueprints and the guidance and the inspiration and the motivation to then secede from the Union and fight a war for independence just like they did. Now, when it comes to the slavery issue, and I think that this is such a touchy subject historically, in retrospect, when we're looking back on it, we have such mixed emotions, which we should, because slavery is a scar on the nation. But to say that the Confederacy, to demonize it as a purely slave nation, having pure slave motivations, is such slander and is such defamation. And it's also ridiculous, because here's why it's ridiculous. These guys were fighting for a cause that had slavery. Believe it or not, the American colonists, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, etc., were all slave owners. But we put them on pedestals and we praise them. We put them on money. We go to their houses like Monticello or Mount Vernon, and we say, oh my God, look at these beautiful, gracious, amazing places. But then we go to Robert E. Lee, Longstreet's, Pickett's, Davis's, places like the Confederates, and we go, burn them to the ground, the traitors. It's like, whoa. How can you blindly ignore the parallels? How can you blindly ignore the similarities? Because it's convenient. Because this side won the war. They won their independence from the crown. But in essence, what it was treason against the British crown. Now, since they set that precedent and set that standard for all descendants, for all American descendants, to lay foundations of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the Confederates, in my opinion, are neutralized. They are basically in an aspect of, you know, our ancestors did it, so we can do it. You know what I mean? It's like there's a precedent. They established the precedent. They broke the mold. And then their descendants, the Confederates, can then go on their way to fight for their rights, fight for their independence, and fight for their freedom like their forefathers did in the Revolution. But in essence, these guys committed treason against the British Crown. And I'm an American, and I love them for it. But what I'm trying to say is, you cannot blindly point fingers and say, well, the Confederates were traitors, but these guys were patriots. Whoa, 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 whoa. You go to England, you go to the British 250 years ago, and you say, what do you think about those colonists in the colonies? And they're going to say they're traitors and they committed treason. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we need to see when we're studying history. That's what we need to focus on and put our perspectives on. We can't make blind assumptions and blindly ignore one side but shed light on the other. Because history is all about parallels. It's all about similarities. And if it wasn't for these guys and what they did from 1775 to 1783, there would have been no Confederacy. There would have been no principles. There would have been no blueprints on that foundation to establish the Confederate States of America. But anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. Peace out.